Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are in the world. I am Susie Byler, founder and lead facilitator in the Creation Temple. And recently, I've wanted to do this video about false light because recently I have been accused of channeling false light, working with false light, things of this nature. And of course, as a practitioner of integrity, I want to examine those accusations to see if they're true, to see if they're false, and to really understand what this is all about. So I also want to preface this by saying I understand that not every one of you will agree with what I'm saying, and that's okay. And feel free to put in the comments what you perceive, how you perceive the false light to be. This can be a conversation. This is not me just needing to teach you or be some kind of instructor here. I am very interested in your perceptions of the false light. So a long time ago, I received the understanding that light can be manipulated and bent to create something that looks like light, but it's actually something that serves the shadow forces or the darkness. Because when you distort light so much, it becomes something that is not from the pure source anymore. And so my belief is that there can be layers and degrees and levels of light becoming false. So it's still light because it originally came from source and there are elements of the light in it, but it becomes tainted when it becomes bent and distorted. So in terms of when you really start to get into this spiritual world, the new age, the occult, all these kinds of things, there are so many opportunities, there are so many places where the light can become false light. And again, this is where people will differ. Well, reading tarot is from the false light. And other people will say, well, no, of course it's not. Some people will say archangels are false light. And other people will say, archangels, they're like these pure beings. I've heard the ascended masters are false light. I've heard the violet flame, Saint Germain, all of that is false light. I've heard Archangel Michael has turned into the dark and now serves the dark. He's false light. And another thing that I learned a long time ago was that we live in a polarity universe. Therefore, everything that we experience, that we see, can be of the shadow or of the light, and sometimes both. And so, yeah, it can get confusing. So let's just use the example of the Ascended Masters, right? The Ascended Masters, that whole idea and concept, that can be of the shadow or that can be of the light. It may depend on how you use it. It may depend on what you do with the Ascended Masters. So for example, if you are worshiping the Ascended Masters, if they are your gods or your gods, then that can very quickly become bent and distorted and turn into false light. Beings are not God. They're not your gods. They may have the frequency of God in them. They may channel the frequency of God. They may embody the frequency of God to some degree and extent. But beings are not God in the sense that we follow them. This is where it gets a little dicey, perhaps a little tricky, because let's use now the example of Jesus Christ. Many will say that this is the only way to get to heaven, to get to God, and they will worship Jesus as if he is separate. And this is where religions start to get into false light territory, because people start to make separate something that is part of us. Now, this may sound like I'm contradicting what I just said, but hear me out. I believe, my understanding is that we are meant to embody those frequencies, the frequencies of Christ, the frequencies of God, the frequencies of Source, the divine, whatever name you want to put to it, that we are on our spiritual paths and journeys meant to embody those frequencies. And in that embodiment, then, we become God. So we are not God, we are not creator, but when we do our inner work and we clear out and integrate our shadow, then there is space for our soul essence, there's space for the divine, Source, God, Jesus, whatever you want to call it. There's space for that to flow through us, and to be, not just to flow through us as if it's separate from us, but for it to become us. So when Christians talk about the second coming of Christ, they're often referring to an actual being, Jesus Christ, coming back to this planet Earth. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. It totally could. I don't know. But what I do believe is that the Christ consciousness, the Christed light, energy, and frequency is meant to return to this planet through us. So you can see where the light can easily become distorted, because if you begin to believe that you are separate from the divine, you can be manipulated, and boy, this is so hard to explain. You can be manipulated, controlled, all kinds of things can be implanted and placed into your consciousness. You can be programmed with all kinds of beliefs and understandings. And I'm sure that has happened with me. 100%. I'm human. I'm not perfect. But because I do connect directly with Source, and because I do always look within and examine these things, my understanding is that I work more and more with the light all the time, the true Source light. Again, whatever that means to you, that might be different depending on your belief systems. So when it comes to false light, the reason different people say that different things are false light is because they're resonating in different frequencies, they're resonating with different programmings, they're resonating with different implants, like if they have entities or implants within their being and they're not aware of it, that's going to be driving some of their belief systems and their programming. And so it gets a little complicated and messy, as you can see. So when it comes to what is the false light, that is going to depend on what you believe, what you've experienced, what you see, your multidimensional connections and awarenesses. And just because you have awareness in a multidimensional sense, like you're aware of other realms and realities and what's happening out there, that still doesn't mean that you know everything, because you can still be influenced by things that you're not aware of. Whether they're entities or energies or implants or whatever, you can still be, your perception of what's happening, your perception of what you think you're seeing can still be influenced. And again, I'm talking to myself as well. I'm not exempt from this. I'm still in this human form with some limitations in my consciousness and awareness. So my invitation to you is to work with your discernment, to set your intentions that you're going to develop deeper discernment around all of this, and that you connect to Source and truth. Continue to set your intentions to be with truth, to be truth, to understand truth, to see truth, to connect with truth. Set your intentions on that. And then you will see how things start to shift and change in your reality. I'm debating whether or not to share this. I probably won't share the whole story, but I will share some because this is something that helped me gain this understanding. I recently had an experience where someone invited me to invite Christ and the Holy Spirit into my heart. And I grew up with this and I understand what this is all about. And so being an open person, I wanted to see what this person would do with me, for me. I wanted to see what that experience would be like and feel like, if anything would change in my life, if anything. I just felt very called to go with it, right? So I did. I went through the process. And as I was talking with this man that guided me through the process, I felt, because I'm so empathic and sensitive, I felt his energy. I felt his beliefs around what he was teaching me. I felt his energy around what he was sharing with me. And then I talked later to a friend, and I felt her clarity around her path with all of this. And in those moments, before I realized what was happening, in those moments when I was talking to these people and I felt their clarity around their path with this, it felt like my clarity, right? Because I'm so sensitive and empathic, it felt like mine. And then I had a realization, and all of this, I was in observer mode, right? I was feeling, I was sensing, I was observing, I was making it mine to try it on, to see what it felt like. I was exploring it. And then I had a realization that this is actually not my truth and what I fully believe, some of the things that these people were saying. And I realized that the clarity that I felt was not my clarity, it was theirs, because that's their path, that's their soul mission and purpose. That's part of who they are and what they're meant to do on their path. And just because they're clear about it and they project it onto me doesn't make it mine. And so that was a huge awareness for me, because when we talk about false light, it's the same. Just because someone else experiences something as false light doesn't make it so. Maybe it's not false light for you. Maybe it's where you are in your journey and what you're resonating with right now, and the lessons or the mastery opportunities that you're meant to be working with right now doesn't make something false light. So again, just taking the example of the Ascended Masters, let's go back to that. So when I first got here in Sedona 8 years ago, I went through a full year with the Ascended Masters. And every Friday, I went to an Ascension gathering. And we worked with the Ascended Masters, and we worked with the 7 sacred flames, and like it was intense, and we went deep into it. And there was so much that it helped me with. There was so much that it healed and cleared out within my being, and there was so much that it did for my frequency. It was powerful, it was potent. And then after a year, just like that, I had an awareness that I have integrated and embodied what I meant to from that experience, and I don't need to continue to go to these gatherings. And it was almost like a religious experience for some of the people who went there. It was like, you know, they're working the program, they're going every week. Like it was a commitment. And that's amazing. That's what we need on the path. I'm not dissing that. I'm not judging that. Like that, I am judging it as something good. That's amazing. We need that kind of, those kinds of spiritual disciplines on the path. So now looking back at that, I asked myself, was that a false light experience? Were the Ascended Masters false light? You know, there was kind of an element of worship involved in all of that. So if you are a Christian, you're going to say, yeah, that was false light because that's not Jesus. If you're not a Christian and you work with other frequencies, you might say, yeah, that's false light because that's not direct source. Or you could say, no, that's not false light because, you know, you learned things from that and you gained so much from that. And so this is where it gets tricky and muddled because it has so much to do with where you are in the journey and the mastery opportunities that you're meant to work with at the time. It's this is why I invite you to really develop discernment and to invite discernment in, because it can very quickly become an ego thing where somebody says, I've seen this, I know all these things, this is false light, that's false light, that's false light. And if you move into that space, you're kind of missing the point, because then you're in your ego and then like you're not working with source light if you're working with your ego in that way. The bottom line is to continue to work with truth. Desire truth. Seek it out. Claim it. Reclaim your sovereignty. And do your best to drop in that space where you are in your heart, where you're cultivating more of your soul essence within your body and being, because that brings discernment about what's right for you. And if that light is true or false for you. This is a time on the planet where much is going to be revealed in the coming years about what has been true and what has been false, and what we've been told that's true and false. And we will get much more clear. My level of understanding is that we will get much more clear about what has been true and what has been false. And I think that will shed a lot of light on this whole concept of false light as well. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to share about that. I know it's been kind of rambly in this video, but there's so many angles and nuances to all of this that I was trying to cover everything. So I just invite you now to take a deep breath, place a hand over your heart, and just commit yourself to truth. Commit yourself to love, because love is truth. Commit yourself to source light, the Christed light frequency, whatever resonates with you in terms of what is truth. And just breathe into your heart, breathe the light of your soul into your being. And allow truth to come into your awareness, consciously and subconsciously. Allow truth to come into your heart. Allow truth to move through your voice when you speak. Allow yourself to become truth more and more in each moment. Thank you all for joining me today. I just wanted to let you know that May, the first weekend in May 5th through 8th, I think it is, I am offering a retreat here in Sedona, finally. We're gonna do it this spring, you guys, so come from wherever you can to get into this country if you're allowed. Crazy times, but we're doing it in person, a live retreat here in Sedona in May. And the theme is Activate Your Soul. So we'll be working with your soul mission. We'll be working with what it is that you want to create from your soul alignments in your life, and healing the trauma that's prevented you from doing that so far, and really communing with the energies here in Sedona, the energies that the land offer us here, and the energies that I've cultivated here. You'll be getting a lot of that. So channeling, guidance, soul family community. Check it out at creationtemple.com/retreats. I appreciate all of you, and I do want to hear your opinions, your perspectives, your experiences with this idea of false light, what it means to you. If you have a different understanding than I do, I want to hear it. Bring it in. Put it in the comments. All right, you guys, I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. I appreciate you. I love you. And take good care of yourselves.